Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. Fresh update on this Max Verstappen drama at the Hungarian Grand Prix. There was lots of talk during the Grand Prix itself from Crofty, from Rosberg and from others. The Max was up until 3 AM the night before, sim racing his night away before, of course, going on to race in the Grand Prix. Red Bull then afterwards said, no, look, Verstappen on the radio was nothing to do with the fact that he was up late last night, but now Red Bull have agreed with Verstappen that he will no longer be racing so late on the simulator into the early hours of the morning. Does this mean that Toto Wolff could come along and say, hey Max, you can sim race all you like here at Mercedes, especially given that he seems to be deeply frustrated even over the last couple of days after the Grand Prix about the state of that Red Bull team? Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. First of all, brand new livery here on the Alpine for this upcoming weekend. It's definitely a unique one. I don't know how good this is actually going to look on the track, just because like the lighting they've gone for here makes it look really good from this angle, but whether it's actually going to work, it's like Deadpool Wolverine related. I guess some sort of films coming out anyway. Kind of fire, not gonna lie, but whether it looks this good on track and whether it looks especially good from P18 on the grids, maybe not so much. Obviously there's been lots of talk at Alpine over the last couple of days, the potential Mercedes partnership, and to be fair, their car aerodynamically is not horrible. Their engine is just pretty bad, and there's plenty of other issues they are currently dealing with, such as this, to be fair, because there was talk from many of the teams as to whether they should expand the number of points given out, because the reliability is better nowadays, and therefore to get P11 is a pretty tall order, but yet you still get 0 points for it. So the argument was, how about we give points down to 12th or, you know, whatever, rather than top 10. The issue is when you make that kind of argument is, where do you stop, right? Why not give out a point for every position, go 20 to first? You know, where does the line get drawn? So the teams basically said, yeah, all right, we're not going to bother with that, and there's going to be no expansion in points given out, and it's been unanimously rejected. Quickly on Kimi Antonelli. Obviously, he had another great weekend at the Hungarian Grand Prix in Formula 2. He won the feature race, he won the Silverstone sprint race the previous weekends. He's still kind of saying that, you know, not sure if he's going to be ready or not. I think that Mercedes have done a relatively good job in recent weeks of trying to keep the pressure down to some degree, and he's really found his stride in Formula 2, I think, as a result. And there's a general feeling from Joe Soward as well in his Green Notebook, I believe, that Mercedes will confirm Antonelli as Hamilton's replacement, which means it's not going to be Sainz if this is true, which then raises the question, where does Sainz go? Red Bull, you've got to say, is still an option over there. Although I will say, if Antonelli does join Mercedes as Hamilton's replacement, you know, what does that mean for the potential Verstappen move? Like, let's just say, hypothetically, they lock in Antonelli and it's a done deal, and then Verstappen comes along and says, hey, actually, Toto, I want to drive for you guys instead, Red Bull have fallen off a cliff, whatever. Then what do you do then? I guess you kick Antonelli out, because you're not kicking out Russell, are you? But maybe you are. I don't know, even though he's had a great season. And there's a feeling that his testing results with Mercedes, and I've mentioned this before, that seemingly whenever he gets in the car, he's absolutely cooking. And the feeling is that Mercedes have kept some of this under wraps in order to try and not build up the expectation to stratospheric levels, although it kind of already has been. But I think we've seen in the last couple of weekends exactly why there is so much expectation on Antonelli and why he is likely to deliver on it, possibly. Quickly on Lando Norris, because this is a pretty crazy stat. He's been on pole 5 times, 2 times in a sprint, Russia 2021, and as I said when we looked at these stats the other day, you know, I'm not going to blame him for Russia 2021, you know, the Sochi run to turn 1 is infamous, but the other Grand Prix, definitely mistakes were made. Although this recent race, there was talk from McLaren that there was a small glitch that affected Norris getting the car into second gear, which created the poor start. So, kind of a fascinating thing to say, because, you know, did this small glitch occur at the other Grand Prix where he also lost the lead going into turn 1? Or, you know, does this small glitch also affect Piastri? Like, I don't really know. Seems to me that McLaren are trying to, I wouldn't exactly say an excuse, because, you know, I guess I'll take their word that this might be true, but they're trying to defend Norris to some degree, which is probably fair, because he defended their strategy calls over the radio, and after the Grand Prix, after all the drama about what they should or could not do, he then decided to yield the position and keep the team happy as a result, although some questions as to whether things are really all going to be sunshine and rainbows after the Hungarian Grand Prix, despite an easy 1-2 for the Papaya team. Ferrari are struggling to get back to where they want to be. They brought an upgrade to Hungary that wasn't initially planned, but they pushed really hard to make it happen, and the feeling is that in Spa, this is where they're going to get their answer. I mean, to be honest, I thought they were going to get their answer on whether the bouncing was there or not in Hungary, but I guess the feeling is that the characteristics of that circuit, Spa is very much a circuit that, you know, teams are going to know well. It has higher speed corners with relatively lower downforce, so if the bouncing phenomenon is going to be there, it's going to be there here in Spa. So Ferrari are hoping that they've kind of dialed it out of the car, and if they haven't, then they do have a major upgrade arriving over the coming rounds to correct this issue, but that's happening at Singapore in like 5 races time. So wherever Ferrari went wrong with their Imola upgrade, or certainly with their Barcelona upgrade, they obviously have lost ground and they're struggling to gain it back, and if they can get it right this weekend in Spa, maybe there's a chance they can still be a competitive force come the end of the season. But, you know, the reality is right now, they are the 4th fastest team. It's Red Bull, it's McLaren, and it's Mercedes in some order or another. But speaking of Red Bull, Max does not seem especially happy with the situation. He was fuming during the Grand Prix on various things, and there was some discussion as to exactly why, and seemingly on some level, Red Bull potentially agree. McLaren, by the way, have absolutely cut into Red Bull's Constructors' Championship lead over the last few rounds. They, as I said yesterday, are probably now the favourite to win the Constructors, even though Verstappen's still been delivering loads and loads of points. But even as Helmut Marko says, Max is really angry. We now have to make sure that his mood improves again, because he was annoyed at everything during the Hungarian Grand Prix. The state of the car, the understeer that he was suffering with, of course, the team decisions from a strategy point of view, the fact that he wasn't able to overtake Hamilton successfully when he was trying to make that happen for a large part of the Grand Prix, the way things happened at the end, obviously on the radio, the crash with Hamilton, getting, you know, over the top, getting called childish by GP, like it was all going on. And obviously Max isn't very happy about it, and, you know, I don't know if this has anything to do with the Jos Verstappen situation, but it wasn't that long ago that Jos really blew up at Christian Horner and said, I'm done with this guy, effectively implying I want my son out of there. And, you know, there's good reason to believe that this could be a plausible possibility in the near future. Max, of course, also, I would imagine, rather frustrated. He's got a grid penalty coming. He's going to take a 10-place penalty this upcoming weekend in Spa, which is a big deal. Now, in previous years, so that means he's P11 absolute bare minimum, right? Because if he's first, then he takes a 10-place penalty, goes down to 11th place. Now, can he win from 11th? Sure, last year and the year before, yes. This year, I'm not so sure. Like, with the strength of the car, Max winning the race from back there is going to be a really tall order. And it's a great opportunity for McLaren to put another dent into his lead, because I think it was Canada. He had that engine issue at the start of the weekends, and that engine was unrecoverable. So that's why they've got to take a new one now, and he's going to take the penalty in Spa, because it's been an unbelievably good track for Red Bull over the last couple of seasons. Max is obviously great here as well, and it's good for overtaking. So, you know, if you are going to overcome a deficit like this is probably the place to do it. But at the same time, for Max, it's not like things have been going great. And even at circuits that should have suited them in the last few rounds, they are still struggling with respect to McLaren. And even we saw it riding the curbs in Hungary. The McLaren could do it better than the Red Bull could. And there are several curbs that need riding here at the Belgian Grand Prix. So I don't imagine Max is going to be especially happy with that. And of course, from McLaren's side, this is another prime opportunity to eat into the points advantage that he has. Certainly Lando Norris will have to think that way, and, you know, I do wonder if Lando Norris, let's say Norris wins this weekend and Max ends up, you know, P4, maybe P3, I would say he'll recover to a podium, just because the car has tended to be so good around here. But even then, like, let's say Norris puts another 10 points into Verstappen's championship lead, then that definitely means that those 7 points that he lost, or whatever you want to say, last weekend may be rather still important. But let's talk about some of the juicier drama, really, on the sim racing stuff. So if you guys are familiar at all with Max Verstappen, you know this guy lives and breathes racing. Like, this is like his life, and he will race all the time in any single series ever. So, you know, he will, after retiring from Formula 1, race, I'm sure, in Le Mans, do other things as well. But he loves sim racing. I mean, there were even rumours that he had a sim racing rig in his private jet. I don't actually know if that's true, but it was at least a rumour at some time, and everyone knows that, I think it was Jeddah, wasn't it? Maybe maybe it was even Las Vegas last year, where he's up late sim racing with the boys, and he's, got to compete in some sort of sim racing tournament on iRacing or whatever it is, and he hops on and plays until the early hours. Now, that's kind of just like his sleep schedule, and to be fair, when the race starts local time, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 2 p.m., whatever, like, you don't necessarily have to get up at the crack of dawn. Like, you can get up at, 10 a.m., get there for the team, got a couple hours of preparation before the Grand Prix. But still, there was criticism for Verstappen for being up so late sim racing the night before the Hungarian Grand Prix. Now, I didn't really think this was massively justified. Like, I think that's just how it is, and that's how Max wants to treat it. But it seems like Red Bull are not so happy about this recent development, and I don't know exactly why, because he's done this for a long time now. But it seems like this weekend's was especially much, and maybe because of the way that he was over the radio. There was a feeling that he was maybe especially like petulant or whatever you want to say, because he'd had a rough night's sleep. I mean, that was the implication made by basically everyone. Nico Rosberg said it, Crofty said it, obviously, like David Croft, a commentator for Sky Sports, probably about 4 or 5 times during the race, that he was like, yeah, Verstappen's behaving here like he hasn't had enough sleep, effectively, was the argument. And it's not even maybe about not having enough sleep, but it's like he was literally just, putting his mental effort into racing the night before and up until the early hours. So that was a speculation during the race. I think they probably went on about it a little bit too much. But after the Grand Prix, you can make the case that Max was not necessarily his usual self. He's a little bit, usually more level-headed and mature than he was during that Grand Prix. And of course, the lock-up and nearly taken out Hamilton. Okay, Hamilton turned in, but there's a corner there. Like, you got to turn in. I know there was also a view of this crash today from Alex Albon's perspective, who had to let them both go for blue flags. And you could quite clearly see from that on board that, yeah, Verstappen was kind of out of control, and Hamilton waited a rather long time before turning in, but, he kind of had to eventually. But anyway, after the Grand Prix happens, Red Bull then said, people who are criticising Max over that, it's rubbish. There's no way that had any impact on his performance. Fast forward, though, to today, and things are a little bit different, right? We actually saw this during the weekends. Like, it's 2:20 in the morning. He went into the pits. I think his teammates couldn't make it or something, and therefore Max had to step in. And, he loves it. This is what he does. But that maybe raises questions on what Red Bull have to say on the matter, because maybe another team might have a different perspective. Because Red Bull have agreed with Max, they are going to put some limits on the amount of sim racing that he can actually do. We agreed he would no longer run simulations so late in the future. This is what Helmut Marko has to say. Max Verstappen was rather thin-skinned this weekend, and of course it didn't take long for criticism to arise. No wonder, given that he spends half the night playing sim racing. This is Helmut Marko talking, right, about his own driver. Just a few days after the team said, oh no, there was nothing in that, guys, that Max just likes to sim race. There was no correlation between him having a difficult Sunday and him being up to 3 a.m. Although, of course, there was criticism, as I say, from Rosberg and from others, that maybe that was the case. So, look, whether Marko agrees that this criticism is fair or not, it existed, and it didn't necessarily look good for all parties. F1 is meant to be Max's main gig. It's not meant to be the side thing that he does while he sim races, like as his full-time job for Team Redline or whatever it's called. So Helmut Marko goes on to say this. I have to say this. In Imola, he didn't go to bed until 3 o'clock in the morning after a sim racing session, and then still won the Grand Prix. Yeah, it was the same thing in Imola. I think the same thing in Jeddah, but I think the time zones there were a little bit different. So, kind of difficult to keep track. Max has a different sleep schedule rhythm, and, he's had his 7 hours of sleep. So the argument is, who cares? He's up to 3 a.m., but, he's up at 10 the next day, gets his 7 hours in, that's going to be fine. But as he then goes on to say, his late night sim race on Hungary only happened because a driver in his team dropped out. Nevertheless, we have agreed he will no longer drive sims so late in the future. So clearly Red Bull must think there's something in this, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't do anything about it. Like, after Imola, maybe there was some frustration from Red Bull, from the team, from, Horner, I don't know, from Marko, that Max was up to 3 a.m, but he won the race. So what are you going to say, right? He wins the race, like, what are you going to do about it? But if he doesn't win the race, and he's still up late, behaving it this way, and at the end of the day, Max is going to do what he wants to do, but he is getting paid like $100 million a year, whatever it is, like 70 million, 60 million or something to be a Formula 1 driver. So you'd think maybe that would be rather a top priority. And maybe the team has made that quite clear to Max and said, hey, we do believe there was some relationship between you and the team not having a good Sunday and you being up late on Sunday night, or on Saturday night, of course, going into Sunday. So therefore making the potential request as to let's not do that. Maybe the curfew is 1 a.m, maybe it's 1:30 or whatever. But the feeling is that they have had a conversation, and I guess Max is going to agree, and it seems like the team has had a conversation and Max is okay. yeah, fair enough. But you do have to wonder what this does for the relationship, right? Because Max loves sim racing, and if he's getting told by his team, I'm sure on some level he understands, but on some level he's going to be like, look, I can handle myself, I know what I'm doing. Like, if you're going to tell me not to sim race, like, you know, who are you to tell me what to do type thing? I'm the world champion, whatever. That may be how Max thinks. If you're Toto Wolff, if you're trying to lure Max Verstappen to come and drive for Mercedes, is this not a nice little opportunity to say, hey, Max, you know, this is going around as well. You can sim race all you want with us. Like, you know, come on, Max, this is a perfect opportunity. We'll get you everything you want. You'll get your private apartment or your sim racing setup and whatever. So, you know, I just think that not even from the Mercedes side, like, realistically, is Toto going to say to Max, like, hey, if you race for us, we'll give you all the sim racing time you want in the world and no problem at all. I don't think he's going to say that. What he may say is, hey, Red Bull are on the decline, the car is falling off, and we talked about some potential reasons for that yesterday. Quite controversial. Check out yesterday's video if you guys haven't done so already. But whatever the truth of the matter may be, the team is clearly not performing at the same level as they were even, you know, 3 or 4 months ago, and therefore the Mercedes option, given that they have a car that can consistently score podiums and can obviously win races, they won 2 in a row, the Mercedes power unit is going to be very strong. There's a lot of compelling reasons why Max to Mercedes does make some sense, and you know, it's always, if these things do happen, and I think there's been a feeling that, you know, it's maybe 50-50 whether it's going to happen or not, either this year or next year. There's often a feeling of push and pull factors. So what's pulling Max to Mercedes, and there's a few things, but also what's pushing Max away from Red Bull, right? And there's probably a couple of things either side of that. Maybe not enough right now to pull the trigger, but it's not out of the realms of possibility. There is more optimism though from Red Bull, although I will say Helmut Marko has been relatively optimistic for the last several rounds, and it hasn't really converted into all that much. He does say off to Belgium, one of Max's favourite tracks. The weather changes almost hourly. Looks like there could be rain Friday, Saturday, and then possibly a dry track, as he says. That suits us rather nicely, but you know, does it suit the performance and the result of their car? Again, very much intrigued your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.